From San Diego, California, this is a One Extraordinary Marriage Show, where being busy is overdone, romancing is fun, and scheduling sex has taken the guesswork out of wondering when you're going to get some. I'm Tony DiLorenzo, your co-host, along with my beautiful wife, Elisa. From coast to coast and around the world, thank you for joining us. It's time to talk sex, love, and commitment. Give us a call on the HUG hotline at 858-876-5663. That's 858-876-5663. In today's show, we talk about how you can have those loving feelings of affection and connection with your spouse once again.
And I want you to think about this quote that said, never stop showing someone how much they mean to you. And that really plays into the fact that, a lot of times we think that those feelings do stop. And we're going to be talking about today's show about how to continue and really build those feelings no matter what season of marriage that you're in. But before we get to that, we start each and every One Extraordinary Marriage Show with a hug. And that's an opportunity for you to hear from someone else in the one family, to find out how their marriage is growing and changing. And this week's hug is sponsored by Storyworth, and you can check them out at storyworth.com. And I'm so excited, guys, to share Storyworth with you because they are such a unique gift idea, especially as we're getting close to Mother's Day. Like, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, what do I get Mom for Mother's Day? You're going to want to check out Storyworth because this is such a unique idea. What they do when you buy a subscription, they're going to send an email to the person that you love once a week with a prompt, right? Like, we're doing this with my dad. Mm-hmm. And so, like, one of the first weeks he got one that said, what's your favorite children's memory? And he starts, in the response, because they email the responses back, because at the end of this year, guys, so every week they get a prompt. At the end of the year, you're going to have 52 stories from your mom, your dad, maybe your spouse, someone that you love, that are going to be compiled into a hardbound book up to 480 pages. And here's where the special part about this is, you guys. You're going to start hearing stories that you didn't know. Or maybe you knew on the surface. But like with my dad, he's talking about like going back to the day of my wedding. And we've shared this on this show before when he and my brother were playing catch and he gets smacked in the head with a baseball just hours before the wedding pictures, right? And to see it like that be one of his favorite children's memories of me and him and my brother, those are the kinds of things that you're going to treasure. So we want to make sure, because Storyworth is doing something super special for the One Extraordinary Marriage family. They're giving you $20 off a subscription. And so you want to make sure that you get this opportunity at storyworth.com/one. And again, make it that last minute Mother's Day gift. It's right around the corner and you'll look like the hero. So this hug came from an email that we received and it said, hello, I've been listening to your podcast for a few months now. My husband and I have been married for 10 years, and I just wanted to say thank you. It has been so good to hear some of the ways that we can grow together as a couple. We have 3 kids under 5, and he is a pastor at a local church. Our marriage at times felt like we were just teammates. This month, we are doing a challenge of no screens after we get the kids to bed. We don't get a lot of nights together because of our schedules with small groups, church, and my job as a photographer. But the nights that we do get to hang out, we often just turn on a show or a movie and don't get the chance to really connect. So this month, we are not looking at screens to entertain us. Last night, we gave each other back massages and talked.
I like that. I like that.
I found out some really cool stories from my husband's travels that I'd never heard before. We also had pretty great sex.
Yes.
That's a good way to go.
That physical touch.
Thank you for what you are doing and inspiring me to even suggest that we do this. We are planning on being so much more intentional about each other this year and going forward. Thank you again.
Love it.
And I just want to say, I hope you all know and heard that she was talking about stories. Like, we're, again, tying into Storyworth. Collect those stories. Mm-hmm. Right? Because it matters. Having that connection with your spouse, with your parents, it matters.
I love this, though, that the challenge, and many of you will have read or have heard us talk about the 7 Days of Sex Challenge. Actually, we did a show a couple weeks back on this, and there are many different ways that we can challenge each other in our marriage to do something. And I think this is a fantastic one that honestly is already resonating with me for you and I. So it's something I think you and I need to discuss after the show here today, and something that I think many of us could really benefit from.
Well, we might have to take it to the community too. We'll have to brainstorm on that and see
Yep.
if maybe we're going to do a no screen challenge in the one family.
Yeah. Let's get into this week's show, though.
Absolutely. And, Tony opened the show talking about the fact that, you can have those loving feelings of affection and connection with your spouse once again. And, the situation that we run into is that so many couples have stopped acting like their spouse is their boyfriend or their girlfriend, right? But more just like this person that they have to tolerate.
Right? Been there.
Or that you have to survive.
Been there.
Right. I remember before we ever did the 60 Days of Sex Challenge, when we were in that place in our marriage, having the thought, I just have to survive this for another 16 years. Because at the time, before we did the 7 Days of Sex Challenge or the 60 Days of Sex Challenge, our daughter, our youngest at that point in time was 2.
Right. And so one of the things that was running through both of our minds was, you know what? We'll endure this until our youngest is 18.
Like we'll go through the motions. And we'd lost the anticipation in our relationship. We'd lost the excitement. We'd gotten to this point where, a lot of you are familiar with the song. Maybe you've seen it in the movie Top Gun, or the Righteous Brothers. It has the line that says, you've lost that love and feeling. And so often today, that's what we're hearing from husbands and wives that write into the One Family or into the One Extraordinary Marriage email, is that I've lost that love and feeling. Right? There's no excitement anymore. There's no anticipation. We don't even know how to relate to one another. And I love that Storyworth is the sponsor for this show, because part of what needs to happen is we need to think back to what we were doing in the beginning.
And it's funny because this week we've had a couple of opportunities, Elisa and I, to sit down with folks, and they've wanted us to share how we met.
Right.
And where we met, and for us to go back to that time and to that place. And one of the folks that we were talking to was flabbergasted, really, to think that Elisa was 19 and I was 21 when we first met.
I turned 20 like 2 weeks later.
Right, but you're...
I know. I was still 19, but I was almost 20. It was a big deal back then.
It sounds like it's a big deal now as well. But to go back and to reminisce and being able to share our story, it always brings back those smiles. Even in my own day-to-day life that can get very hectic and I can lose sight of where we've been, to be able to share that with somebody and smile at those first 8 weeks of Elisa and I being in Colorado, and what it all started as. I mean, it was truly just 2 people hanging out.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to last more than the summer. And here we are, 22 years later of knowing each other, going on 23. And they're important. Those times to think and reminisce are important.
Well, and for those of you that don't know, brand new listeners to the One Family, we are so excited to have you listening here to the One Extraordinary Marriage podcast. And, quickly in a nutshell, Tony and I met the summer of '94 when I was out at the University of Colorado Boulder doing a summer internship. And when we met, we both kind of thought, well, I'm going back to DePaul University in Indiana at the end of the summer. So we're not doing the long distance thing. And yet I will tell you, on our first date, you want to talk about making an impression. On our first date, the girl, it was like a big deal that somebody was actually going out on a date in this internship program, because we were all living together and, hanging out over the summer. 2 of my friends spent 2 hours getting me ready for this date. Tony goes on our first date, you guys, in a suit and tie. As a 21-year-old college guy in Boulder, Colorado, he's
in the middle of summer, and it was hot, and it was like a black wool suit,
which we held on to for 2 or 3 years after we got married, which is actually kind of funny.
I think we held on to that thing longer than that.
But we were so intentional that summer, even though there was in the back of our minds this idea that it might not last. Right. But at the same time, we'd plan those dates. He would be like, hey, I'm getting off work at such and such a time. Do you want to go for a drive? I remember taking drives up to Left Hand Canyon and
Chautauqua Park.
I remember hiking in the Flatirons. I remember late nights at Taco Bell when he was like, hey, I was going to go out with friends, but why don't we go grab a bite at Taco Bell? Because we were, poor college students, and the $1 menu or the 59-cent menu, whatever they had back then,
59 cents,
23 years ago. But we did. It was so intentional. There was so much excitement, and he would knock on my door. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Tony, that kind of thing. And then, like so many of you, he puts a ring on my finger, and we have all the anticipation of our wedding day and all this excitement. Like, we're still being super intentional, right? Because you got to plan it, and you got to make sure your colors are going to be right, and the right people are going to be there, and the cake, because we had to have cheesecake because that was our thing. Like, so much planning, so much of an investment into like what we were doing
on that one day.
Right? Like we intentional in the dating, anticipation, excitement, intentional in planning the wedding, anticipation and excitement. And then comes sometime after the honeymoon where the intention starts falling away.
And I want to put in right here for those of you who have recently gotten married, that, you know what? If you had sex that first night and it wasn't the best, it's okay.
Right.
You keep being intentional about your sex life, because that's where it gets better. 20 years into this thing called marriage, we had sex last week, and I'm talking about it today, 3-4 days later, going, holy cow, Lisa, that was some of the best sex we've ever had. So you don't stop on, we had sex once and it hurt, because you may be virgins, and that's totally cool. It's not the end of the story, it's the start.
Right.
And even if the conversations aren't going exactly like you thought they were after you first got married, it's okay. Because when we're intentional about that, and you hear each and every one of these shows and you take action, like, don't just listen to these shows or listen to this show and go, oh, that's nice, Tony and Elisa, and then put it away. No, be intentional about what we're saying and then take action, because that's how you grow. So for those of you who are in the newlywed years or even a little bit past it, there's still amazing things to come. And we're believing that over your lives and over your marriage.
Absolutely. And, it's one of those things where no matter where you are in marriage, some of the things I'm going to mention right now are things where you start to see life get in the way, or you start to take things for granted. And it's those places where you can lose those loving feelings, right? It's when you stop being intentional. Like, maybe you aren't doing date nights anymore, right? You're like,
there's a big period in our marriage when date nights were not on the radar, not even anywhere near it, around us, nothing. Now, if you go onto our Instagrams or Facebook pages and stuff, now you'll see us post those things. And sometimes you won't, because sometimes those are just private for us. But there was a big period of time where we didn't do those day, evening, in the middle of the afternoon. And it really impacted us.
And sometimes, like, we did go on date nights, but we'd lost so much intentionality about going on a date with one another that we would just literally roll out of the house in whatever we were wearing. Like, I know there's a show from way, way back. I couldn't even tell you what show it was, but I shared that I actually wore a Dr. Seuss t-shirt on one of our dates to the sushi restaurant, like a gazillion years ago. But I remember that because now, like, I mean, if it was just something casual and we're like, oh, we're goofing around, we're going to go to the beach or do something, like, I might still wear, I don't have that t-shirt, but I like Dr. Seuss. So, but it was one of those things where, Tony would wear the jeans that he would wear for work, right? There was no intentionality about, like, I want to look good for him. Now,
and it's not just the outward appearance. Don't get us wrong here. And yet the time you take to get yourself ready, like the first date that we went on, when you got ready for your wedding day, you were intentional about what you were going to put on. And I'm not saying every date is your wedding day, and yet every date you're going on, that's now your spouse.
That's good.
And so what are you showing? Hey, I've messed with the kids all day. I've been working all day. This is the best I have. Man, go take a shower. Go put some deodorant on. Go put on a polo. Maybe you're not a button-up shirt guy. Totally get it, man. Go throw on a polo. Go throw on a nice t-shirt, with a nice V-neck or something. Just dress it up.
Right.
And it's not, and again, it's not just the outward experience that you're showing, but it's what you are conveying to your spouse when you say, you know what? I'm going to look good for you because you are my wife.
Mm-hmm. Or my husband.
Or my
husband.
Right?
Like, shave your legs again. I mean, there's a good way to be intentional. But let's even talk about communication, right? Because, life starts to happen and the communication starts to disconnect. And I love that hug came in that we were able to read. Here's a couple super, super full lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lots of little kids, pastoring a church, has a business, all this kind of stuff. And it wasn't like they said, you know what, we need to go and spend, $1 million to make our marriage better. They said, what would happen if we turned off our screens and invested, catch that word, if we invested in each other and spent time touching each other, right? Back massages, not a bad way to go. If we spent time talking to each other, this wife is learning stories about her husband's travels that she didn't know before. How fun is it for her to now have that knowledge of her husband's life before they were together?
Mm-hmm.
Right? We've got to, we invest so much in the courting, dating period. I want to know you. I want to talk to you. I want to hear all this kind of stuff. And then we get married and we're like, yeah, I know you. Tell you what, I've been with Tony almost 23 years. There are still times when I'm like, I didn't know that. You know why? Because we got to ask the questions.
And we grow and we face different challenges in life and we add kids or other responsibilities and we change. Mm-hmm. And I've said this before, and for those of you who are new listeners, we change. And so we're not the same person that got married 20 years ago. I'm not that same person. You're not that same person, you know? We have grown, and even over the last 9 years, since we did that 60 Days of Sex Challenge, the growth that has happened.
Well, I'm chuckling because we did have dinner with some friends last night, and they were asking, you know, they got the story about, oh, you guys met when you were 19 and 21. And, you know, the gal was like, gosh, like, I can't even imagine being married to the person that I was with when I was that age. And, you know, we got to thinking, we're like, you know, we've gone through a lot and have grown in a lot of different ways. And that one conversation actually has been opening this trip down memory lane for us. But, you know, what had happened in especially the first 11 years of our marriage is that we had lost that love and feeling. We started saying things like, this is too much work, right? And what I'm saying right now, some of you have said it and some of you have heard it.
And some of you may be even thinking it.
You may be thinking it, you know, this is too much work, or, you know, why are you so needy? Or why won't you spend time with me? Why won't you talk with me? Why won't you have sex with me? Like, these are all the things that are pretty good indicators that there's a disconnect going on. And that disconnect is where you feel the loss of those love and feelings. And I'm not just talking about, you know, the desire to have sex. I'm talking about the desire to be with the person that you stood up in front of God and everyone else and said, I take you for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. Right? And so we've got to equip you guys and ourselves, because it's interesting, since we decided on this show topic for this week, how much of what we're going to share with you in just a few minutes here, we've been walking through just in the last few days. But I want to make sure that each and every one of you doesn't forget to go to storyworth.com/one and take advantage of that $20 off your subscription, because Mother's Day is right around the corner. Give this gift and watch how those stories start to transform your marriage, your life, your relationships with your family. So, you know, like I said, Tony and I have been walking through this particular journey the last few days, and just going into this place of, you know, even though we're in a good spot, even taking these actions to take our connection to a greater level, right? Because you can be, and I remember this from a show, I think it was episode 100, when one of the folks that wrote in and just, you know, was congratulating us on episode 100 talked about, you know, good is just okay. Mm-hmm. But you want to take your marriage to great. So it doesn't matter where you are. You can always take your marriage to the next level. It doesn't matter where your feelings are today. You can kick them up a notch starting right now. And that's what we want to share with you. Because, you know, the first place you got to go, guys, when you've lost that love and feeling, is you have got to start expressing the feelings of love and affection and gratitude without the expectation of reciprocity.
And here's the thing. You can't do it one day and expect it all to change.
Thank you for saying that.
You just can't. I mean, I forget what they say and how long a habit can change or what it could be, but I would challenge you, if you're in this place where you haven't shared your love, your affection, or your gratitude towards your spouse, that you do it for 30 days. And it's a challenge to do that. And if something happens that, hey, you get to 15 days and then you miss a day, then the clock starts again. Mm-hmm. But don't stop. It's not a, dang it, I failed, I messed up, I'll never be able. No, it's a, hey, I got 15 days in, I'm going to start again, and I'm going to get to 30 days or whatever that number is for you. But please, folks, please don't do it once and expect everything to change in an instant. I believe in miracles, and they can happen. And yet there are times when we have to keep pushing forward and we got to keep praying into that situation. And we got to keep taking action in that situation to have change and to see it happen.
Well, and I have a coaching client. This one is so significant because one of my coaching calls just this past week, a couple's been, struggling, and they'd had a very sizable discussion, some would call argument, and they had actually gone into this place where they weren't speaking to each other for a few days. And the husband shared with me, very strong-willed, like most of my clients are, both husbands and wives. And he shared with me, he said, Lisa, he said, I invited her out to go for a drive. And while we're out driving, I just pulled over to the side of the road and said, I just want you to know how much I appreciate everything that you have had to put up with over the last year. And I've been working with this couple for a few months, so I've got a pretty good understanding of what that is and the significance of him stopping out of the busyness of life and saying to his wife, thank you. Thank you for everything you've put up with. And, the wife, I looked at the wife and I said, did that just about knock you over? And she said, it's the first time in at least a year that I've heard it. And you could see the shift, right? It's not a one-time thing. And the husband even said, you know what, I'm not going to stop doing this. But it was that big step to reconnect when that love and feeling definitely wasn't there. Like the guys, they weren't speaking to each other, right? And he had to man up, or, in some cases, it's got to be woman up and say, this is how I feel about you, right? This is how we've got to express those feelings. It doesn't stop on the day we get married. It doesn't stop 5 years in. Our spouses still need to hear how we feel about them. They need to know it. It needs to be verbalized or written down on a card or written on the bathroom mirror. Another thing that the two of you need to do, and we mentioned this early on in the show, is you need to continue to date. It's not just how you get to know someone to get married. It's that time apart, out of your house, and we're not talking like every date's got to be, 5-star restaurant and, cost you $1,000. We're talking get out and do something just the two of you. Get out of the confines of your home, get away from your children, because the two of you need space to grow and reflect and spend time together.
One of the things that we've been doing as the weather has been changing is I like getting a log and putting it outside on the fire pit. Now, our kids are older, and so for them, a fire pit is sort of like, they'll hang out for a little bit, and then they'll go in and do their thing. And so for you guys, it might be getting the kids to bed, maybe get that fire pit going, while the kids are going down. For some of you, and I've heard from a number of my friends recently, they have hot tubs.
I was just thinking the hot tubs.
And so, making a time to get in that space and calling it what it is. It is a date time. I think we tend to minimize these times together. Oh, it's just us jumping in the hot tub. Let's just minimize. No, it's awesome. Like, call it for what it is. It is a date time. Social media doesn't need to tell us what a date is or isn't, right? Because like Elisa said, because you didn't go out to have a 5-star meal doesn't mean it's not a date. So let's stop minimizing this quality time we have with our spouse. Hey, if our date night means we're going to jump in the hot tub, that's our date night. Celebrate it.
Be intentional. Wear a fun bathing suit or no bathing suit. Whatever you want to do.
I like the no bathing suit.
I know. I thought I threw that out there just for you. We don't have a hot tub, guys, so that's not happening. Yeah. But I want to
fill our tub.
We do have a big enough tub to do that.
We do.
I do want to share, though, I did a Facebook Live interview on the One Extraordinary Marriage page a couple weeks ago with Alicia Darby-Zimnock of winapageant.com. And, we were talking about these 3 marriage tips from a pageant coach, which you guys can go to One Extraordinary Marriage. We're going to put the link in the show notes as well. But one of the things that she was sharing is that she and her husband, one of the dates that they have on a regular basis is that every month they celebrate Valentine's Day. Right. This is such a priority to them that they date, that they'll, sometimes they'll go away for a weekend. Sometimes they do something special on a day, but make your own Valentine's Day. Or maybe it's your anniversary that you celebrate every month and you always go out on the day of your anniversary. Whatever it is, do it consistently, build the anticipation, build the excitement, invest in your relationship. And then another thing that I want to share is that you need to spend time regularly going down memory lane. You do. You can't forget about what got you to where you were or where you are. Right? You've got to, Tony and I were doing this today. We were out and we were talking about the early years, and, in all honesty, guys, I think our early years, we've got few memories of them because they were not good. And Tony's like, I don't even know if we ever showered together. Right? Totally random memory from somewhere in the vicinity of 20 years ago. And I'm like, no, I distinctly remember one time we were in the shower together, and I remember that it was awkward because my hair must have clogged the drain. Don't ask me how I remember one clogged drain from 20 years ago. I have no idea. No idea.
And when it comes to those going down memory lane, we don't need to go that far back at all.
We don't. It's just random.
It is. But one that we were talking about as well was our trip to Machu Picchu last June. And the time that we got to spend together, our traveling experience through Peru was something extraordinary. It really was. It was a time when both Elisa and I were just full of joy to be experiencing this together. We didn't get into one fight the entire trip. We didn't have, we didn't really have any downtime per se. I mean, we were running a lot, and yet there was so much joy that throughout the trip and the places we got to see, and those, that ability to go see Machu Picchu and come around that corner and see that and experience that together. So for some of you, it might be, the trip you took on the river with the boat, or it might be the hike that you took up to this awesome peak. It might be the trip that you took last year. It might be, the trip you took when you, first found out you were pregnant. I don't know what they are, but we got to do them.
It may be, fun things that the two of you have done, and going back and looking at where the two of you have been and what the two of you have gone through and made it, because some of the memories, guys, aren't going to be like the most spectacular memories, but seeing how the two of you have traveled through them, significant. That's why it's got to be a part of what the two of you do. And
it's also a growth time. Because you realize those times that you did go through some of those tougher times together, and look where you are now, and that is, the piece where you get to claim your stake and go, yeah, that was one heck of a time. And yet look where we are now.
Absolutely.
Come on, bring it. We're going to keep moving forward together because we're a team. We love each other, and we're going to have those loving feelings.
Mm-hmm. And finally, you had those feelings at the beginning because you were doing something. Do what you did at the beginning. Be intentional. Be excited, right? Do things that bring the excitement back into the relationship. Build anticipation. Invest in your relationship. Guys, it worked at the beginning to get you to the point that you got married. Don't just think that because you got married, you can stop doing those things. We've got to be doing those things for the rest of our lives. Why? Because your marriage and mine matters, not just to the two of us, but to a whole world that is watching how the two of you grow. They're watching the example that you set. They're watching how maybe right now you don't have those love and feelings, but you're working to recapture them. You and I, we have such a responsibility to our spouses to continuously be working, continuously investing in growing together and in growing ourselves. We need to have those love and feelings in our marriages.
Yeah. So you might be sitting there going, you guys, I don't have those love and feelings, and they've been gone for a while. So what do I do? Well, first you're going to get intentional, right? You're going to be intentional this month. It's a new month. It's a new day. And what's happened in the past has happened in the past, and I get it. We all have our past. But what are we going to do starting today to get the gratitude, to be intentional, to get those the expectations, the feelings of love, of romance, of joy back in? And I'm going to challenge you guys to come up with a way that is best for you. Right? Are you gonna pick a date each week? Are you gonna do something different there? Are you gonna write a letter to your spouse? Are you gonna put a note somewhere that may just share the gratitude you have for them, even in those moments when you're frustrated with them. So what are you going to do there? Because I'll tell you, those love and feelings come back when you start doing something. Love is an action. It's not a feeling that just sort of comes and goes. No, you act, you do that. It's a verb. So this month, make it, or even this week, let's just go this week. What are you doing to show your love, your appreciation, your gratitude for your spouse? We love you guys. Have a fantastic week. We can't wait to see you next week. Enjoy it. If you have any questions or anything, don't hesitate to email us at info@oneextraordinarymarriage.com or give us a call on the Hug Hotline at 858-876-5663. Love you guys, and we'll see you next week.